Looks like we're about to begin. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Small Business Masterclass. My name is Tom Perry, and I am the chair for the Small Business Committee for AFCEA International. And today's session will be a cross between a panel and a fireside chat, where I've worked with our panelists to go over a very important topic to them, to you, and one that keeps a lot of us awake at night. But before we get into that, I wanted to take a moment to thank AFCEA for putting this on. I want to thank our panelists for taking time out of their day to come to join us, to share their knowledge with us. And most importantly, I want to thank each one of you for joining us today, because without you, we wouldn't be up here talking. I'm here moderating today, but I'm also representing this broader small business community. So I would like to explain why I'm standing here. I'm currently in my second term as the Small Business Committee Chair. And this summer, I will be passing that torch on to Mr. Will Swan. Will Smith, you have just upgraded. I hope this year has marked a bold step forward in how the small business community is viewed, not just as contributors, but as innovators and innovation partners. Each month, the small business community gets together for our small business events. They're open to all AFCEA members, and we have welcome speakers covering a wide range of topics, from industry experts to the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Unit, OSDBUs, to senior acquisition leaders. If you are not on the distribution list and you'd like to be, please see me or go over to the AFCEA booth and ask somebody to get you on the distribution list for the Small Business Committee. In the past year, we've seen a lot of amazing contributions, and we've seen a lot of attendance from all over the globe. We've had people from Australia join our sessions, from Europe, CONUS, and OCONUS. We've hosted sessions at the DHS events. We've had the TechNet IndoPac event, and hopefully this event will keep that ball rolling and move us forward as we move forward to TechNet emergence. Our members work alongside nearly every major federal and DoD agency, and when they need help on bids, a lot of times we look to one another on our team within the small business community. Our masterclass today is the brainchild of our outreach subcommittee. It's led by Ms. Stacy Vaughn and Mr. David Angeletti. They've crushed it historically, and looking forward to them continuing the momentum. So let's jump into and talk a little bit of small business, cybersecurity, and artificial intelligence. Outside of AFCEA, I am a small business owner, like a lot of you. And over the last decade, we've seen a lot of different changes. The CMMC in cybersecurity is one of the biggest and brightest changes that we have seen recently. But why? Let's talk a little bit about what's really behind this cultural shift. So I'm going to go over a couple of scare factors. You guys all have probably heard them before, but I'm going to give them out again because I think that they're poignant. In 2023 alone, there were over 2,200 ransomware attacks on U.S. companies. And what is showing is 43% of those attacks were directly targeting small and mid-sized businesses. QuickBooks did a study, and it showed that 37% of ransomware attack victims had 100 employees or fewer. I mean, that's astounding how many small businesses are getting targeted when we thought we could just hide by being a small business. Now, Verizon added to this small business nightmare fuel when they discovered that the average cost for a single cybersecurity incident ranged from, they actually have an exact number of $826 was the smallest number they found. So I average it, it's going to cost you between $1,000 and $650,000. It's no surprise that when small businesses get attacked, they usually close shop and fold up because they can't afford the attack itself. Now we get to pile on. We're going to add in the fact that AI is coming in and changing the game for the attackers. I sat in on a presentation 2 years ago now where they were talking how they were using ChatGPT as part of their red team phishing attacks. And they started using it to basically take that prince from out in faraway lands who needed to get all of their money out of we all know the scenario. Well, they started to take that and they fed it into ChatGPT, had it change it, had it add logos, and had it say, hey, just click on this link for your free Starbucks gift card. And it had a logo that looked very much like Starbucks. It wasn't the exact logo, but it looked similar. That ended up increasing their click-through rate something like 200%. What they're finding is the click-through rates now for these phishing attacks have gone up 350% year over year because the people who used to put these on no longer are... We're going to get some IT in here.
Oh.
Okay, that worked. All right, I'm almost done my preamble, I promise. All right, so what that's doing is that's empowering these non-native English-speaking attackers to be able to sound like they are your best friend, and it's scary. All right, so last month, I sat in a luncheon where the DoD CIO stood up and talked a lot about how CMMC has to be a cultural shift. And this cultural shift has to happen from the very bottom of our community, from the very bottom of the defense industrial base, all the way up to the top. And that cultural shift can't be we should do it. It has to be we are doing it. And she made a very poignant statement saying that the enemy is at the door. China is not waiting for you to get compliant before they start attacking us. They are attacking now, and they are attacking regularly. Be prepared. So what can we do to be prepared? And how can we afford this? That's why I'm excited to talk about ENCODE, because it's building a marketplace for small businesses to operate securely inside the DoD cyber perimeter. To get us rolling, I'd like to hand things off to Mr. Matt Paserno. Matt is ASALT's Chief Cyber Acquisition Officer and the architect behind ENCODE. He's been at the forefront of developing solutions that make cybersecurity both effective and achievable, especially for smalls. Matt, tell us a little bit about how you got here and what you'd like to talk about today.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Appreciate it. Good morning. So, Matt Paserno, I started up at beautiful Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, while it was still there. Doing S&T, I started as a contractor. Actually started as a temp employee for a small that was a contractor. Then went to the government, went through science and technology, some operational support on some OCONUS efforts, and now sitting in ASALT headquarters as this, basically, as Tom said, the cyber lead for Army acquisition. So across that kind of continuum, I've amassed a collection of problems across our supply chain, across modernization efforts. But where we are sitting in ASALT headquarters kind of gives us the right vantage point to try to take a more cross-functional approach to some of those problems. And so looking across that continuum, one of the gaps that we saw was obviously within small businesses, the heart of innovation. And it wasn't the fault of small businesses, but it's how do we protect our data? How do we protect their data? How do we help with compliance? How do we do better as a team? And so DoD, we understand, is hard to do business with, right? Like, we've got a lot of requirements, we've got a lot of compliance things. So we try to think through a way of helping small businesses with that. It's been an evolution. But we came up with this concept of ENCODE, where we would look at creating a defended enclave or defended environments where small businesses, before they're even on contract, can leverage better security for additional cost savings and ultimately better security and really protecting our data. We see numbers where small businesses, as I said, are leaving the DIB because we're hard to work with at times. And so really we're just trying to come up with ways to help ameliorate that problem, and that's why we're here, to get feedback, share awareness, and really appreciate everybody's time today as we have this discussion.
Wow, thank you, Matt. I can't wait to crack into that more. We're going to have a really great conversation, but before that, I wanted to also bring our next panelist up to give us a little bit of a perspective from the other side. A lot of us work directly with our large partners, and a lot of times our large partners, they just don't understand the small business side of things. Krista's here. She's been on both sides of the fence, and I'm not going to steal any of your thunder. Krista, take it away.
Good morning. Thank you for having me today. I've sat in the seats where you all are actually last year during the small business panel here. So I'm honored to be here. I've been a small business advocate my whole career. I've spent half of my time in small businesses and also half of my time working for some of the large, BAE, AECOM, and now I'm with a company called Amentum. And what I've found in that is that there is sometimes a miscommunication between the large and the small, and what the expectations are, where expectations lie, what the goals are. So one of the things that I've always brought to the table and worked with my teams around is ensuring that we're working together to identify what are the end goals and what are the steps to get there. The collaboration is key across the board to make sure that as a small, if you don't understand something that's expected, you're working in a procurement portal, that you're not getting the response, that you reach out to the large business collaborators, the people on the business development side, the folks that are on the small business team. I will tell you from an Amentum perspective, our procurement portal houses thousands of small business partners that we work with on a daily basis. And we always meet, if not exceed, our small business goals across the board. So I'm happy to be here and bring the perspective from both the small, trying to get a large to bring me in and put me on a team. It takes a lot of homework and a lot of elbow grease to prove that your company is ready for that and that you have the capabilities and the security to withstand the requirements that the government is going to demand and that the large business demands.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. So where I'm going to go from here is I'm going to start asking some questions. It's going to be conversational. As we get closer to the end, I'm going to look to you to ask questions that you have that I haven't covered. Hopefully, if I've done my job good as the teacher, I've taught you all that you need to know, but we'll see how that goes. All right, so I'm going to start with Matt and talk. We want to crack into a little bit more about ENCODE itself. I mean, this really feels like a departure from the you guys figure it out. And it seems like the CMMC has been a wasteland of, we're going to do this NIST thing. You should have already been doing it. Why aren't you doing it? And now you guys are coming up with a new way of looking at that. Tell us a little bit more about how that's going.
Yeah, well, I think first I want to say I don't view ENCODE as a CMMC thing. I view CMMC as a way to drive security within contracts and small business. But ENCODE is really about helping small businesses achieve security, CMMC or not, right? We have to hit those companies before they even get on contract, before it's a compliance issue. And so that's changed our approach. Originally, what we started with was really a desire, talking with a number of businesses, talking with a number of smalls and large, on solving problems of overcoming some of those cost challenges. Initially, what we found through, I think, NDIA studies was that for the first year, now back to CMMC, but the first year of compliance was going to cost about $80,000 for implementation of controls, about $70,000 for the actual assessments and things like that. And so we're looking at $150 to $180K just to get in the door. Looking at Army small businesses, there's about 12,000 companies 12,000 smalls that are doing business with the Army today. And if you just do the math, you get to a point where it's almost $2 million that you need to be able to break even, where your profit or you have the flexibility to reinvest some of that into that 150, 180K to even kind of break even and do those controls where it's fiscally viable. And I think that was really impactful to us. It was impactful to our leadership because we obviously want to get that innovation from the smalls. And we're just looking at raw numbers where these companies are, or you all are having to make those business decisions on whether or not you want to go through this hurdle just to hope to compete with us. So we started thinking about, would we be able to open up an environment initially that small businesses could come into? We started working with some cloud providers through Accreta with Army Cyber Command, And we said, hey, these cloud providers offer services. We can maybe defend those, we being the government, and offer this in open folks to come into to that enclave. We did some red teaming, we did a proof of concept, we did a couple series of proofs of concept, and we realized the cloud service providers that they didn't necessarily want to be in that business. They wanted to provide services, but they didn't necessarily want to deal with the day-to-day, and they said, hey, recommend you all work with some managed service providers, and here's some of the ones that we're currently working with. And we said, all right, that makes sense. So that kind of started our evolution. From there, we continued on and continued to do some analysis and red teaming. And as we did market research, we realized there's not just really one managed service provider. There's a number of managed service providers. And we did a commercial solutions offering that's currently on the street. I can't get too much into it because we're in the acquisition process of that. But we found tens of companies that were claiming to be able to do some of this type of work. And the role of government is not to compete with industry. So we said, hey, we probably should not look at a government-managed solution, but how can we incubate and accelerate industry to help solve other industries' small business problems? And so instead of looking at deploying an enclave, we really shifted towards creating awareness of these types of solutions. And so that's why we're here today, right? Check the box. We're raising awareness of it. But the next steps is we're looking at standing up a marketplace. So I kind of think of it as like a NerdWallet example. I don't like to really drop like individual companies, but you think about like a small business being able to categorize their particular needs, looking at the gamut of potential trusted service providers, and understanding what's best for them for their particular needs, whether they're software intensive or they need basic productivity. And so it's kind of been an evolution of where we're going, and I can continue to go on to that, but I'll pause for some thoughts.
Nope, perfect. I want to continue to dig into a little bit more of what type of offerers you're seeing to add to the marketplace. But before I go to that question, I want to give Krista a chance to talk a little bit about from the proposal side, from the teaming side. We've got these large businesses who you have to meet your CMMC requirements as well, and they flow down to us small businesses. How do you see the larges starting to do, and what are they not doing effectively that we need to help to, as small businesses, bring to the table?
I think there are a lot of requirements that are coming across with certification requirements, and not all of the large businesses have all of those certifications as well as the smalls. A lot of times you're finding large businesses that are bringing together many companies through acquisition. It's been an acquisition upcycle. And so then you're also running into which certification are we using, which entity are we using, are all of those certifications applicable today? I think that when we're seeing opportunities be released through the life cycle, getting ahead of those things early, being part of the RFI so that if your company has a good opportunity to pursue something but may or may not have all of the certifications required, understanding that up front. When I was a small business and the CMMC certification requirements were being floated, everyone was talking about them, we took the time to bring our FSO in and bring on an intern for that person that was a graduate student doing security and certification as their major. And so there are ways that small businesses can bring together the paperwork, the documentation at a lesser rate than outsourcing, than going to a contractor to support it or hiring someone directly. And I think that a lot of the larges are taking action to find ways to help the smalls do that. I know that our company and companies I've worked with in the past offer workshops on training. Being part of organizations like AFCEA and other professional organizations, and the network that you build there also brings great capability to figure out ways to cover those requirements. In the end, the government's not going to change some of these requirements that are coming, and they're coming faster than ever. I think COVID kind of slowed down many of the timelines that were going on, and we're picking back up now. The life cycle is moving. And so if you have requirements, there are a lot of companies that have capitalized and are now offering services to not only help you get your books and your paperwork in order, but also help you through the certification process. And if anyone here in the audience or anyone that needs help with that, I have several colleagues and acquaintances that I've worked with that do a really good job of helping get over that hump to get you certified.
Oh, that's exciting, hearing that there are teammates that are willing to actually put in the additional work to help us get there. And that's great.
I just want to jump in real quick and
please.
say, too, that from our standpoint, yes, we want to help you overcome our self-imposed challenges and regulations and such. This administration is going to be very focused on reducing some of those. But it's not just about our compliance. It's about protecting your intellectual property and incentivizing small businesses to protect that intellectual property and in communication with the government. Because we don't want to necessarily buy something that's just been compromised and then focus on securing it. So the more that we can focus on increasing security across the industrial base, we'll be a lot better off.
Absolutely. So security, like you mentioned before, it's not so much about CMMC.
Right.
It's about security and about securing your information. With that in mind, and this goes out to either one of you, whoever wants to field the adversarial AI conversation piece, is we're seeing adversarial AI change quickly. What do you think the future holds for the security stack in helping us to defend against those types of attacks?
All right. I'll say, I think it creates a ton of opportunities both for attackers and defenders. And like you said, on the attacker side, it amazes me that it's 2025 and we're talking about phishing. Like, I thought that would have gone away 5 years ago, and here it is, like, more powerful and more focused and more capable than ever. And so I think when we really look at smalls, we're trying to think like mom and pop shops in a garage, and they don't necessarily have the resources or the bandwidth to be worrying about China trying to leverage AI or other nation states trying to leverage AI to take their intellectual property before they've even sold it, right? They're trying to do good things. And so I think our approach by outsourcing or leveraging other commercial entities that can implement AI on the defensive side and manage attack surface, help manage accounts, help do all of those sorts of controls that 171 and 172 are getting after, I think that's a much more feasible and economically viable approach.
Great answer. Anything to add to that, Krista?
I thought it was
No?
great.
He covered that one pretty good, didn't he? Okay, so then this is about security. It's about getting ourselves there. How? What are the specific solutions that you guys think? What does Encode bring to the table? Talk a little bit about how that marketplace is shaping up for us.
Sure. So it's still early, but what we realized is working with some of the managed service providers, at first we said, great, we'll help them get their C3PAO assessment, we'll sponsor them, we'll do like that. Some of them are already doing that. Great. Industry is solving that problem. Then we said, all right, well, we'll work with them and some of the small businesses to get their, what I would say, derivative CMMC Level 2 certification, right? So leveraging the environment of that managed service provider to get their own CMMC Level 2 certification. And a couple smalls that we're working with are already doing that. Great. So industry is continuing to solve that problem. So what we found is that approach is really viable. It's just not really known. And frankly, I didn't even know how many companies out there, and we were trying to do the acquisition for it. And we got, as I said, 10 scores of potential providers coming to us and telling us and making the claims of those services. The challenge with that is when you have so many, I feel like it's almost overwhelming for small businesses to now pick one, right? And so our job isn't to necessarily certify them, but we're trying to help small businesses match with the appropriate type of provider that would make sense for them. And so when I talked earlier about that 150 to 180K, what we're seeing is about a small business could inherit about 80% plus or minus of the controls required for CMMC Level 2 compliance. And so that's kind of where we're looking at now. The cost for that first year goes from 150, 180K down to 30K approximately. And so that's still an investment, but it's a lot more manageable. And across that, when I say 80, it's still a shared responsibility. And so between the managed service provider and the small, and so helping kind of validate, are the providers doing what they're saying that they're going to do? Establishing a common framework for how we track that shared responsibility matrix. So you know that, like, if you want a low-end solution just to kind of for the bare minimum, you're going to get this type of coverage. And if you want a more bespoke or a la carte solution for more software development or modeling and simulation, you're going to get this type of coverage. And then it's very clear. And so hopefully, as part of that, not only on the procurement side, but also on the assessment side, it's a little bit out of our control. But as this market is evolving, we don't want the same managed service provider to be assessed 50 times for 50 different small businesses, right? So we'll look at working with the organizations that do that certification, so that hopefully we can streamline that and hopefully get the cost down continue to get the cost down even more.
Okay, it sounds to me like you are putting together a solution of providers that will start to get automatic levels of approval without having to go through the entire assessment all over again.
I wouldn't go as automatic, because the way some of it, I mean, the government doesn't actually do the certification. But what we can do is establish the standards and incentivize the providers to participate in that way. And I think, maybe from a assessor standpoint, from a C3PAO assessment, maybe we're doing less big assessments and more smaller ones. But ultimately, the goal is we're going to create more demand for this type of capability. And so I really see the market going up. When we talk with both the assessor side, the small business side, and the managed service provider side, right now it's just kind of a nascent market. Mm-hmm. But we're going to, through our SBIR program, through a number of different efforts, we're going to really start directing, not really directing, because that's not what the government does, but we're going to suggesting to those businesses and really try to generate that market. There's options down the road for should the government maybe do kind of a consolidated buy to get prices down even lower. That's down the road. But really, what we're trying to do is just incubate and accelerate the matching of the smalls with these trusted providers.
That's a great answer, and thank you for clearing that up. So we start talking innovation, and we start talking SBIRs. Krista, you've been on that side of the fence. You've been with the innovation build-up from industry. Talk a little bit about that and how you see this security requirement affecting those small businesses who are bringing innovation in and day out.
Yeah. So one of the smalls that I worked with was a non-traditional small business, a startup software company outside of the government market, but with the goal of getting into the government market. And when you start to look at the barriers to entry in the federal market, it's a little overwhelming. So being there and having the experience that I had working on the federal side was beneficial, so that our team could collaborate and talk about what are the benefits, what's the cost-benefit analysis, what's our return on our investment. And, when you start to, we also worked with insurance providers. And so I also knew the cost of insurance for cyber security on small businesses. It seems steep as well. However, if you're creating some innovative capabilities, if you're bringing something unique to the market, if you've got first mover advantage, investing in your business, investing in your cybersecurity in your company is one of the best things that can be done to also protect your innovation, your technology, and also the confidence of your team in what you're building. If the risk of I'll give you an example. I worked with as a consultant a cyber company, and phishing came up. Unbelievable. One of our senior VPs was contacted by our CEO to send him money, and immediately he sent him money. Sent him 2 gift cards. I was like, you work for a cybersecurity company. You're a senior VP. You've been in the industry for 30 years, and you were in the military before. What didn't cross your mind?
What was his email?
And but it can catch everyone off guard, and that's what we have to remember is putting the time and the money behind this investment and understanding how to protect your organization and protect the innovation that you've brought to the table, it's just as important as the money that you're putting in to develop it. If you are bringing something new to the table, if you are developing something that makes a difference, investing in the security around it, and ensuring that you get the testing done so that you're not drinking your own Kool-Aid is critical. So the level 2 or beyond certifications is very important so that you're not just saying, well, I've got all my documentation and I think it works and my security person told me that it's good enough. It's probably not good enough if you're not getting someone else outside of your organization to take a look at it and really do a thorough assessment of where you stand.
Yeah, and investment is important, but the right investment too. And,
right.
and there's so many opportunities that at the government, we're not trying to tell anyone like how to invest, but we're just at least trying to help level the playing field so people understand the market, the need, and have a framework to make those more informed decisions.
Yep. So this all brings us to the conversation of investment, cost. Just real quick, audience, show of hands, how many of you currently has or is working towards your CMMC, paying people to provide that support? Wow, that was a larger number. I think that's 90% of everybody in here just raised their hand. So one of the things that I've been talking to other small businesses in is how much it's costing them. And about 2 months ago, I was hearing the C3PAO alone was costing about $30,000 of investment just to get your C3PAO assessment done. To get the system to a place where it needed to be, I was hearing costs from $60,000 to get your GCC enclave stood up to wildly crazy numbers like $14 a user month to have your environment stood up on somebody else's enclave where you don't own any of it, but they maintain all of it as a managed service provider. Are these the types of providers that you're seeing come to the marketplace where we will have those types of options and you guys will have some of that kind of vetted ahead of time?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've got some that claim to do it for like $10 a month, and we've got others that claim to do it for $1,600 a month per user, right? So like a wide swag. And that's why we're really looking at, so what you would really, the minimum that you would need to be a provider is really your own CMMC level 2. And so if you have that and you're providing some of those services to somebody else, then they can fill in the gap, and that makes sense. To me, that's kind of the bare minimum. I think about like commercial ride shares, like the bare minimum you need from somebody to get a ride is a driver's license. I'm not going to necessarily just hand somebody money on the street to give me a ride somewhere. So I'd like to know that they don't have like a DUI or 1,000 points or like, a bad history, and have some confidence that I'm going to get what I'm going to pay for and I'm going to have the experience that I pay for. So that's really kind of what we're thinking about. So, and we're evolving this. We just had a conversation yesterday with the Navy CIO and Principal Cyber Advisor. We've had conversations with Ms. Arrington, with DoD CIO, with the Cyber AB on what a trusted service provider should look like. Things like not having foreign ownership, control, or influence. Things like a history of performance. Things like a defined shared responsibility matrix, so that when somebody comes to that marketplace, they understand which controls they should expect to have, and what's already been validated by an assessor. A number of things like that. But we don't want to overregulate it and make it too cumbersome, right? But basically just having that type of approach where smalls know what they're getting. They know that it's a responsible level of trust. And I think beyond that too, right, as this market evolves, it's going to be more targeted. So even if the security of the enclave stays the same, the likelihood is going to go up because it's going to be a more attractive target. And it's one thing for a small business to get their level 2. Unfortunately, if there's a compromise or something like that, that's a kind of localized effect. If a trusted service provider now is compromised, that could have a lot of derivative effects across multiple small businesses. So I think making sure that we're just holding them to a slightly higher standard I think is in everybody's best interest. And ultimately, it's going to be on industry's decision. Like the government's not going to make the decisions. It's on industry to pair and decide to use that capability. And if it makes sense to do it on your own or on-prem, and that's the right business case, then that's the right business case for you. We're just trying to be able to accelerate those types of business-to-business conversations with minimal investment from the government.
Perfect answer. Thank you very much. So this is leading me into the conversation of, yes, we all need to get in there. And you saw the number of hands raised that they were getting in to the CMMC battle. And I call it a battle because when that happens, supply and demand have a very simple curve. And we've seen the demand skyrocket. Now, this question is going to go over to you, Krista, is as that demand skyrockets, a lot of it is the expectation that more and more contracts will require this. What are you seeing from a prime standpoint of the number of contracts that are going to require the subs to have their own environment, and how are you guys standing up ways to help them get there?
I mean, we're seeing nearly every contract coming out has unique cybersecurity requirements. We are working with the primary smalls that we work with on specific projects. So if we're executing with you on work that is ongoing today, we are looking at, the larges are looking at what's going to happen in 3 to 5 years when we're rebidding this. Some of them even shorter. And so are the teammates that are on our team today going to be able to meet those standards, those expectations, to have the requisite requirements to meet the cybersecurity expectations of the RFPs? As I mentioned earlier, a lot of large businesses offer workshops, have teams on the IT side and on the procurement side that offer either trainings or offer examples of how the expectations are coming through, and maybe even some guidelines or processes to get your company there and be prepared. In the end, I think that as we've been, kind of the general consensus is there's going to be a lot of companies that are going to take advantage of this need, the certification requirements. Doing your due diligence up front to make sure that you're working with a company that has experience, has references, and is respected among the other partners that you see out in the marketplace is going to be critical. I know that I've worked with a few through the companies that I've been a part of, and I know that there's a rigor to getting this done and to making sure that you put the right amount of effort into ensuring your security of your business and also the future of your business development and proposal efforts. You're going to have to not only do it, but you're going to have to write to it and talk about how you're continuing to do it into the future.
So this is a real-time need now that the market is just going to have to find a way to support. And Encode is providing some support to the direction of that. And I'm going to ask you, this is a question I didn't talk to you about, but I'm going to see if we can do this. Specific products. Are there specific products you're seeing that are more of a bottleneck or things that are more open that makes it easy for people to jump in quickly?
On the small business side?
On the small business side.
So why I really like our approach now is when we first went in, we were kind of going in for this one enclave, and it was really hard to pick a solution that was going to solve all of the needs of all the small businesses. Everything we've seen is so diverse, and those are only the smalls, but the 12,000. We tried to pare that down and focus on the 6,000 NAICS codes that were like really the S&T, the science and technology innovation, and even that it was going to be impossible, right? And so whether it's if we try to come up with a solution that had software development and more advanced capabilities, it's going to be overpriced. And then the companies that just need the basic office productivity or travel requests or things like that, it would be unaffordable. So really helping small businesses understand their needs and matching them more kind of one-to-one with a provider that meets their needs, that's like why I'm really excited about our approach now. And there's so many different types of solutions, whether it's just basic software as a service or more complicated PaaS or IaaS type solutions. Pretty much they're all primarily cloud-based. It's a much better focused, tailorable type approach.
Yeah, we talked about this before, where the needs of the small business market are so diverse. It's almost impossible for one to provide it all.
And that's just the Army with 12,000. We look across multiple services, and that's why it's really important on our end that we're doing that coordination with the Air Force, the Navy, OSD, to make sure that we're not just doing our one-off thing for the Army, but the solution that we are looking at is really cross-service, and also leverages some of the other services from NSA, other services from the Navy, and other things like that. So we're really trying to create an ecosystem for those defense, those DIB smalls.
Yeah, that's great. Buttoning up that offering with the free services that NSA offers and other organizations. CISA is another one who offers.
Office of Small Business.
Yeah, yep. Office of Small Business. All right, so I'm going to open up the floor to questions because we're at about that time. If you wouldn't mind, I know Marina had a question. If anybody else has questions, please just move over to the microphone and I will get you when you have your question.
My question was that you were describing essentially the CMM framework to mimic what FedRAMP already does for that. How does mimicking that, I understand how it helps small business, but how do we keep it from being overburdensome and redundant the way the FedRAMP is and still make it accessible to the small businesses that need this and in order to play in the Fed space?
Yeah. No, I mean, we can't solve everything all at once, right? So it's going to be an iteration, and we think that this is at least a step in the right direction. There's obviously going to be a backlog of assessments, even aside from level 3. So by introducing this and allowing smalls to offload a lot of that assessment process, we think it's going to reduce the overall cost. We talked a lot about cost, but it's also about time and making sure that these things are done at relevant time, especially with backlog. So I think what FedRAMP does right is the reciprocity side, right? So if we can do that and maximize reciprocity as part of that trusted service provider, we're going to save a lot of time, we're going to save a lot of money, and then hopefully we can get through more assessments through more smalls. So I hope that kind of answered the question without saying it's not obviously going to solve everything all at once. Right. Sorry.
Yes, no magic bullet. Mr. Swan?
Yep. Will Swan with Watershed Security. We are a cyber firm, so we've been entrenched with CMMC since it started. But one question I have several, but a couple for you guys is, how's ENCODE going to help me get to that L2 certification as a small business?
I mean, hopefully, so we're not there yet, but our approach is that you would be able to kind of see what your needs are. I mean, you know what your needs are, but relevant to potential trusted providers that would meet those. And if you decide that it's in your best business interest to pair with one of them, then hopefully that will get a more streamlined assessment process, offloading of about 80% of the cost. Like we said, numbers anywhere from 150 to 180K down to potentially 30K. So it's really trying to save time, save money, and improve security.
Good deal. And for you, you have a lot of subs on your effort, and that CMMC requirement is going to
flow down
to everybody. So how, from your perspective, how can small businesses, especially ones that may not be IT, be ready to partner with companies of your size to be successful on a CMMC audit?
So we've had some conversations with smalls that are very interested in partnering with very closely coming opportunities. One of the things that we've had to do if, requirements are in there for certain security certifications is look at potentially on-ramping in the future, or pursuing things, other closely similar things, and then coming back around. But the answer is that this is going to have to happen. I mean, the smalls have to get the certifications. It's going to flow down. It's already we're seeing it in many of our contracts, especially some of the very large ones.
And then, I don't know if I'll get an answer here, but, Katie Arrington came out the other day and says, we shall be swift from a software development standpoint, right? And the things that she gives a crap about is how do you develop, how do you monitor, how does she validate, how is that going to affect kind of the SIVR program as non-traditionals come in through that pipeline to be able to develop solutions for the government without necessarily being, they might be L1 at this point, but will they ever get to L2 until they go to a phase 2, maybe a phase 3?
So two different aspects, and I think both of them are about protecting the data across the acquisition continuum from pre-acquisition into acquisition. I'm confident what Ms. Arrington is focused on is security by more modern means or by other means. So less on the paperwork side of RMF, more on the technical assurance, the software assurance, the hardware assurance, attestation of that, SBOMs, XBOMs, and then doing more modern supplier vetting. And I think when you do that and you reduce the current of test and retest burdens today, it actually reduces barriers to industry, and it also allows us to work with potentially more non-traditionals, where if there was some risk indicator somewhere, we don't want to necessarily say the government would blackball them, but it just makes it harder for the government and sometimes to say yes, whereas, okay, if you have one risk indicator, but you're doing all of these other things and you're conforming to these both technical and supply chain vetting standards, now we want you to come into the department, and not only that, once it's assessed, we're going to maximize that assessment process throughout the department, so it doesn't need to be tested and retested. That's a little bit, when I say retested, I mean the whole thing. There needs to be a continuous monitoring, whether it's a secure software pipeline or things like that. So I think the details of that are still obviously going to be forthcoming, but I think the main takeaway is that whether you're looking on the small business side or in the government side, doing those security things are going to be necessary, and we're just looking at more modern technical ways of achieving those to protect that data across the life cycle.
That was a very loaded question. It was one we were talking about earlier, and I'm glad you brought it up. We have 2 more questions. Go ahead.
Absolutely fantastic.
We have a little time left.
All right, John Diedenhofen, FCA Las Vegas chapter president. So one of the things you mentioned, Tom, was that small business can mean a lot of things with the various thresholds and everything. So when I'm counseling my members, the Nevada single-member LLC solopreneurs who are just starting out, they're looking to scale, and they're looking to do the right things at their scale. Where should I guide them, myself included, to go the very first place? Start here. What would you all recommend?
That's a good question. So I'd love to say our marketplace, but it's not up yet, right? I don't want to just say, I guess that's a good question. So, there's free services now. There's free services now that are out there through the Navy Office of Small Business that will help with security. I think looking at just commercial vendors at the moment for potential outsourcing of those capabilities through a potential managed service provider. But it's going to be kind of the Wild West out there at the moment.
That was my sense.
I don't have a better answer for you, but that's why we're working it, honestly. So I can answer that better.
Before we jump, Krista, do you have any thoughts on this one?
For our corporate perspective, definitely working with our procurement team. They have some guidelines, recommendations on how to do that. But I agree. If I were just starting out on my own and looking at this, I would be going to an expert to help guide me.
Okay, excellent.
And I'll give you one more answer to that.
Sure.
Just to pile on, the Small Business Committee itself.
Right.
We have meetings all the time, and we actually have a meeting coming up for the Mentor Protege program later this month that's going to focus on CMMC, where we're going to bring some vendors to the table to start talking about what solutions in particular the market is, because it's changing rapidly. Encode's coming up, and it's going to get better, and it's going to improve that stance and give us a marketplace to look at. But it's still growing.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess just taking a step back too, one of the challenges we found was when we were trying to offer like maybe a government managed solution. We didn't want to pay for like the licenses for everybody's individual software. We were trying to pay for the security side of it, and we found a lot of the commercial solutions now through Microsoft or Google or some of those additional things that you get with those advanced licenses are kind of what a lot of CISOs are doing across larger companies or entities as well. So even just starting with some of the things like that is better than just self-hosted,
right on
in the basement.
Excellent. Hey, I know it's evolving, so thank you guys very much for your guidance.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on that. I would say that one thing that a new company starting out now has an advantage of is that they can get into this knowing, hey, I need to be looking at FCI, I need to be looking at CUI, because the cost from a small business perspective, if you think about it, the average commercial, Microsoft, $20 a person or something like that, right? Pivoting to a GCC environment or something that's going to be exponentially higher, right? You're looking at solutions that are $200 a solution, per person. So for new companies getting out, go into that with that mindset. If you start now with that higher level environment with a smaller overhead, then you're going to be growing exponentially, and you're going to have that built in as you scale out, as opposed to having to shift and dump a lot of money in, like a lot of us health small businesses are doing now.
Cheaper to start there than to migrate there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, Contran, Beyond Group Cyber, CMMC consultant, focused. So as a small business ourselves, SBA, just SMB, one of the things we do is we're looking to help out different organizations, other small businesses. So as we cut our price and what we do, your organization, do you see anything else besides, I think one of the biggest questions they have is, where can I find funding, right? Do you see the AFCIA funding something? Do you see Apex, SBIR? Where can they find a lot of these fundings, and what do you organizations see that, hey, where should they go for it?
Wow. I don't see AFCIA funding it, but that was kind of the hope that Encode was coming to the solution of providing us with those locations of where we could find that. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, and we were, when we started this, and even what our undersecretary announced in October, the government was looking at actually providing more of that funding. The problem was that that kind of puts us in the position of picking winners and losers, and that's not something that we wanted to do from a pre-acquisition standpoint, especially if we were really trying to get folks early in the life cycle. It's one thing to maybe GFE people some stuff if they're already on contract, but that doesn't solve the problem like we were trying to do left of that. And so I think enabling industry to, I don't want to say solve the problem among industry is probably the most viable solution. What we're just trying to do is get the cost down and increase the demand so that all of that generates lower prices.
As a CMMC consultant, you're seeing industry start to provide some of these services for free to those SMBs. You're starting to see things like NSA, who I'm pretty sure they have a booth here on it today, offer these free industry-based solutions that are out there. So those will be some of it, but it's definitely not all of it for certain.
Yeah, and we definitely really need more like webinars, little engagements with industry leaders to talk about what there is out there, right? There is some stuff that we've seen, but then at the end of the day, how far does it go in really helping organizations, mostly SMBs, get where they need to be?
Oh, Matt, the demand for you is high. All right, we've got time for one more question.
Hi, good morning. My name is Kevin Thomas. I'm with Avent Cybersecurity. As a CISO, I've helped 3 companies kind of get to or through the CMMC process. But on the small business side, I just had a quick question about ROI. So if you're a big company, right, and you're building weapons systems and all that, CMMC really makes sense because you're showing you're protecting that CUI and that data there. However, if you're a small business, is there really a tangible world where you're going to be processing CUI on your corporate systems and kind of not being given a government GFE laptop, but you're company, you're just going to use your laptop and not get a government laptop. So, I mean, is there really an ROI for the small businesses who aren't doing that kind of building and having that CUI on their corporate systems? And what really is ROI even for the government, from that perspective for small businesses?
I mean, I think it's obviously impossible for me to sit here and say ROI for every small business, right? So, I mean, that's really a business decision that they need to make, and if they want to do business with the government. But I think we're also very focused on CMMC and dollars, but really what we're talking about is protecting a generational transfer of intellectual property to our adversaries. And so there's definitely the ROI of maintaining the confidentiality of their intellectual property. So whether or not they want to do business with the government or the DoD or other federal agencies, it's still protected. But obviously that's going to be a case-by-case business on the small businesses. We at least want to, raise the bar a little bit for across the industrial base.
I would add to that as a small business, as you're looking to grow and expand the scope of the work that you're doing, looking at the contracts that you may be interested in pursuing in the next 3 to 5 years so that you know what the expectations are, and it gives you time that you're not like, oh man, the draft RFP just came out and now I'm not certified, I can't pursue it. So, when you're talking to your partners and the smalls, kind of super smalls, looking at where are you today and what's your strategy look like? What's that pipeline? Are there lily pads that you're jumping from? Here we're doing CETA support, but next we want to do, we want to step in to do more engineering. And so if you're doing that, you should expect that these certification requirements are going to be there in the coming years. So it might give them a little more time.
Yeah. And just even with the way the department is shifting more towards commercial solution openings, like CSOs specifically from these traditional RFPs, a lot of emphasis on bringing in non-traditionals on smalls to be able to compete and through a much more streamlined process.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And one other thing I'll throw onto that, and I was going to ask Krista, is we're starting to see more RFPs and RFIs come out with CUI attached, which means if you don't have a CMMC level environment, how are people partnering? Are you seeing that as something that you're having to kind of keep your smalls at arm's?
I have not seen that yet.
Haven't seen it yet?
In my environment. No.
I've seen it a couple of times and had a couple of conversations, but it's something that's coming, at least people are anticipating it coming.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. Okay, we'll go one more question. I think I have just enough time if it's short.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. So we are consulting for cybersecurity, providing expertise, including innovation in other agencies within DoD. But very interested in the ENCODE, but I don't know much about it. But my question is, if we do get your service, would that permeate throughout the DoD
ecosystem
agencies, so we don't have to redo it?
Yeah, I mean,
very attractive.
Absolutely. Like we're just we're not going to be certifying either the smalls or the trusted providers. We're just trying to raise the awareness and help the businesses identify the best. So, it's a very service agnostic approach, and if you leverage one of those potential offerings, then you should be good across the department.
Do you have information like?
Yeah, we were talking about it. Interesting time with what we're allowed to post on like the internet and things like that. Okay. But we can follow up.
Yep. Okay. And so that's a perfect segue for us to give a big thank you, please, big round of applause for our two panelists. As we wrap up, if you have any questions, we're going to stand around for a couple of minutes. You can ask us some questions directly. Additionally, if you'd like additional information, such as the slide deck that has been presented on ENCODE recently, you can reach out to myself or Matt, and we will get that information to you. Thank you all very much for attending. Go have a great conference, everybody. Goodbye. Thank you very much.